Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dawn Newman, and I am the Research Director at RHI and also an Associate Professor at IU School of Medicine. I want to thank all of you and thank IU Health for sponsoring this hour today. So many of you may or may not be aware that we conduct groundbreaking, cutting-edge, life-changing research at RHI. But I know I'm a little bit biased as the research director here, so I think let's let a story speak for itself. And that's what we're here today to talk about, one of our recent success stories with research. So what we did with this research study is we had created an intervention, an innovative intervention group therapy program for treating anger and aggression after traumatic brain injury. And this intervention, called ICAN, standing for Intervention to Change Attributions That Are Negative. And essentially what this intervention was, it was a 6-session therapy intervention, and we trained perspective-taking skills to help people with brain injury be able to have a more benign interpretation of other people's behaviors, to give them the benefit of the doubt, to reduce their anger in response to other people's actions. And what's really interesting is that with the data, what we wound up seeing is that we found substantial reductions in anger and aggression in our participants with TBI. But what was really cool is that this was only a 6-session intervention, and that most of our participants were many years after their brain injury. So that was really neat to see substantial changes, people so long after their injury. But I think, putting aside, some of that data, I think more interesting is to hear from the people that were involved. And so I wanted to introduce the clinicians that were involved in the intervention. So I want to turn to Dr. Sam Backhouse and Beth Helton, who were involved in our study, and absolutely could not have done this study without them. And I have no doubt that much of the reason for the success of this study was their absolute talent, clinical talent. But Sam, why don't you take a second and just introduce yourself in terms of your title at RHI and what your role was with ICAN.
Sure. So I'm Samantha Backhouse, and I'm a clinical neuropsychologist. Technically my title is Associate Director of Outpatient Neuropsychology. So what that really means is that I work out here at our outpatient clinic, and that I get the privilege of working very intensely with our skilled staff, with all the therapists, and integrating neuropsychological services along with the therapies that they receive. So I do a lot of assessments with individuals, as well as treatments, individual treatment, caregiver training, couples therapy, family therapy. That's basically what
she does it all. And with ICAN, your role with ICAN.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. So with ICAN, I was actually one of the clinicians that was trained to actually give the intervention itself. So the intervention is facilitated by 2 people, and basically somebody like us, right, that would work together in providing the actual treatment to the participants going through the study. So.
Awesome, thanks. And how about you, Beth?
My name's Beth Helton. I'm a speech therapist here at RHI's Northwest Brain Injury Center. And like Sam said, I was a facilitator of the group. Not only did we kind of lead discussions and provide examples of how we're going to do some role playing, we also took lots and lots of notes so that Dawn could do all that interpretation and come up with the great findings that we had.
Yeah, awesome. And it's really cool to have the duo of a neuropsychologist and a speech pathologist. I think it was a really neat combination. And I've just heard so much feedback from our participants how phenomenal you guys were. And you're actually going to hear a little bit about that in a recording later. But I think with that said, so I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about what were some of your observations of some key changes that you noticed in the participants in this study from the beginning to kind of the end of their participation in that 6-week session?
Yeah. So oftentimes, people would come in and they weren't quite sure why they were even there. And so we had to do a little bit of education about irritability and anger after brain injury and how that might impact their life with their family and their friends or at work or school. And through the course of the 6 weeks, it was really fun to watch as kind of the light bulb went off in a lot of the folks. And one of the techniques that we do is the chair intervention, and we ask them to be themselves in one chair, and then they get up and change to another chair, and they're the other person that they might have had the conflict with. And there were so many aha moments with that when the participants would try to put themselves in the other person's shoe and see, well, what did that situation feel like to the other person? And a lot of them were able to come back and say, you know, I didn't yell at my dad for a whole week, you know, because I thought about maybe his perspective. So it was a really nice, positive change overall for folks.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that was a really cool thing to see when we would do that sort of repositioning in the chair, and to have those sort of aha moments, and then for them to take that and do something different with that, right? To take that aha moment and say, I think I need to have a conversation with such and such about this. But the other really cool thing I had noticed is when we did those brainstorming exercises, and each week we would show them a little video clip, and then they would have to watch a particular scenario, something happening seemingly bad happening to a person, and they would kind of have to make some interpretations of why might that person have acted that way, why did they respond that way, right? It might be a situation that would make one angry, like someone taking your parking spot or spilling something on you, and why might that happen? And week to week, as we would go through these different video scenarios, we would ask them to brainstorm all the various reasons why a person could have taken somebody's parking spot other than being a butthead, right? So
Technical term.
Yes, clinical term. So I think that was a really neat thing, right? That week to week, what would happen is that I think in the first session, you might just get a few responses and you'd write them up on the board, and people would yell out answers. Well, maybe they did this, or maybe they were having a bad day, but they were still kind of stuck in that, they're just a butthead. As the weeks progressed, you could see their mental flexibility increase even more. And therefore, right, the perspective shifting, that perhaps that they're not really trying to be bad people, they're not trying to be hostile, they're not out to get me, and therefore I don't need to directly be angry with them. However, I can think about alternative reasons why. And that's something that's often affected in persons with traumatic brain injury, is that ability to see something from a different perspective. When a person kind of gets stuck on one line of thinking, they tend to hold on to that emotion very strongly, and that's what leads to that anger. And so when you can kind of switch that perspective from, I don't care what anyone says, they're a butthead, to, well, they're having a bad day, they might be having issues with balance, or maybe they they trip and fall into me, or if they take my parking spot, maybe they had an emergency, right? And now they go from shifting out of feeling incredible hostility and anger toward the perpetrator, right, to more of an understanding and a little bit more of an empathic response, hopefully. So I think that was a neat thing to see that shift.
Yeah, that had to be really cool to be there and witness something like that and those changes in people, because it could be so hard. And you typically when you do have these people coming in, there's a lot of internal self-focus about me, and now you're shifting the focus. It's not just about me, there are other people, and kind of seeing it from their point of view. So it's incredible to be able to make a change like that. And I think, Sam, so as a neuropsychologist, I'm sure you see and treat people with anger and aggression, with traumatic brain injury quite often. And I guess I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, what kind of challenges does that present? And even kind of with the treatment, would you say, how challenging is it to treat people with brain injury, and why is something like this so important?
It is, well, first of all, we see persons with, we see issues with anger, frustration, irritability, aggression, and we see those types of issues very frequently. And as a matter of fact, irritability and frustration issues are one of the most frequent types of emotional challenges that we tend to see. And what will happen is that if it's not addressed properly, it only tends to get stuck even further, and it only tends to escalate. And so now it's affecting, right, when you get sort of stuck in that one line of thinking and then one way to react to a situation, then the person ends up having problems in their daily functioning, right? So they have problems in their relationships with their children, even in parenting, in their marriage or other types of close, intimate relationships. And also in the community, right? I mean, think about just going through a simple drive-through, which isn't so simple anymore. And you know, many people are at a heightened frustration these days without a brain injury, and that escalates even more. So it can affect even a person's ability to keep their job.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, it's just there's sort of a host of challenges that occur, and it's very frequent. And so that makes it a very important goal for us. It is one of the priorities for us to really try to provide these types of treatments, and oftentimes it is very challenging to treat because when you get stuck in that line of thinking and that anger goes up to a 7 or an 8, it's very difficult to shift out of that. And, you know,
So would you say that, like, from your knowledge, like, are there a lot of evidence-based treatments for anger and aggression after brain injury?
Not really. I mean, right? I mean, like, there's not really, not specifically directed. There's stress management training for, you know, lots of different types of emotional responses, but nothing as specific as this. And quite honestly, this is kind of hitting it at a different way. I mean, a lot of treatments that tend to be out there for persons with brain injury, there aren't specific for anger and irritability, but when there's stress management and they're targeting a little bit of that, they're really targeting more behavioral things. Okay, stop, take a break, walk away, take a couple of deep breaths. And they have tremendous value, but what we're getting at here is before you even get there, and that is shifting a deeper perspective. And it's very challenging to do so. That I'm aware of, I have not seen any specific interventions targeted at shifting one's perspective.
So this is very unique and definitely needed to have evidence-based approaches to treating anger and aggression. So I feel like you kind of got a little bit at the next question I was getting at, but Beth, I'd love your input too. And like, from a clinical perspective, what value does a study like ICANN bring to RHI and in general?
Yeah, well, for one, it kind of helped me manage my perspectives from time to time. But I have implemented some of the things we've been talking about in the ICANN study with the groups with some individual patients. I have one gentleman who actually went through the study, didn't really get into it while he was there, and he recently came back to me and he said, I need some help with this. I'm having too many arguments. He got kicked out of his gym. He lost a job because he was just so angry all the time and felt like people were trying to get back at him. So I just saw him this morning and he said, you know, I haven't had a blow up in 3 months.
Wow.
So
that
was really exciting. So even though he didn't get that then, now he's able to think about it and put it into real practice.
Very cool. So basically we're getting the innovation here, we're helping the participants that are participating in research, and now it's very quickly translating into the patients that are coming here clinically and not really being able to be accessed other places because it's happening here at RHI. So that is really super cool. I really appreciated hearing your input and your experience with this, and I've been so fortunate and grateful to be working with both of you on this project. I think so. Next, at 6 o'clock tonight, you're going to be hearing actually from one of the participants who participated in ICANN and hear his experience and the impact that it had directly on him. I hope that you guys tune in. It was just super important and impactful and powerful to me. So I would love for you guys to tune into that and hear straight from him. But I just want to thank everybody from the research staff that helped with this to the participants who were involved, also IU Health, as well as the funding, the RHI Foundation for supporting us doing this research because if it wasn't for them supporting and enabling us to do this research here, we wouldn't be able to make it available to our patients. And also to the funding agencies, specifically NIH and NIDLR, for supporting this work. Thank you so much, and please donate to the foundation for research. It's so important.